Alright, so I'm basically only doing this as a sort of corrective to a previous TikTok I did about another TikTok which pitched itself as the only 10 out of 10 animated movies, part 1, and proceeded to list only Pixar movies, one after another, even Cars. Just 4 Pixar movies, even Cars. Haven't seen it, so I can't judge. Can't judge. Another Pixar, eh? Another Pixar? That was quick. No, it's not. Are you insane, Cars? Oh, so Pixar are the only ones who would make 10 out of 10 movies. Off. 10 out of 10. We're just giving away 10 out of 10s here on TikTok, even to Cars. I try to explain to these kids today that for the people who actually grew up with the Pixar movies, Cars was a major falling off point. That was the moment when a lot of us realized we were aging out of Pixar, but also seeing how mediocre Cars was in terms of its story and in terms of its novelty to what had come before it. I understand if you saw it when you were younger and really liked the Cars. It's not 10 out of 10. And for everybody who decided to make it about not seeing Ratatouille, let me explain something else. Your silence on handing out a 10 out of 10 to Cars does not bode well for your opinion. All the people who didn't respond to Cars that way, they became what in online angry animated movie nerd circles we talk about as Pixar people. And Pixar people, what can I say? They went down the path of the dark side. Man, you either die the hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Just endlessly, desperately trying to find more people to watch Lightyear and tell you The Good Dinosaur was totally underrated. It's not underrated, it's accurately rated. But I came here for a real reason. In the spirit of good faith, I'm not just going to fire off random internet haterism and rest on my laurels. Instead, I'm going to actually be constructive and challenge myself to come up with a list of 10 out of 10 animated movies, just 4, like the previous one, with the challenge only being that I will refrain from just listing one studio's animations 4 in a row. It's just not a good look. What can I say? You're calling it the only 10 out of 10 animated movies. You maybe want to spread it around a bit, shuffle it up some. Number 1, Adventures of Mowgli. I want to ask you kids a question. What version of the Jungle Book are you used to? Let me phrase that a different way. Which version of the Disney Jungle Book are you the most familiar with? Just as a sidebar, if you know about the 90s one, Jason Scott Lee, man. He killed it in that. Movie's not as great when you grow up, but man, Jason Scott Lee. Killing it. Killing it. No, I'm talking about a 5-part serial released in the Soviet Union from 1967 through 1971. If you're not familiar with Soviet animation, or if you're only just getting started on seeing foreign animated films, whether they're old or contemporary, I think this is a good jumping on point. Because immediately, a lot of us are gonna compare it in our minds to the American adaptations of the Rudyard Kipling book. And we find something quite different, something much more mythic, not really so narrowly kid-oriented. And with an animation style that, like a lot of Soviet animation, isn't really concerned with total immersive realism in the same way that American feature animation has traditionally been since Disney. It's more about the beauty of the art itself having its own ability to bring the illustration to life and make it look like something vaguely familiar, but also completely otherworldly, something that is not an approximation of real life. Put it this way, all of Disney's stabs at the Jungle Book are basically either musical comedies or action-adventure movies. This is like a very literary adaptation of the book, one that's trying to be more like a dream or a fairy tale being narrated to you in a very distinct idiom that's not supposed to be overly familiar. Which really works in this version of the story that's much more focused on the idea of Mowgli's journey being a kind of heroic fantasy allegory, where it's not really about good characters versus bad characters, it's about the ruthless law of nature, about fortune favoring the clever and the industrious, and the character who's able to forge bonds and make alliances for mutual benefit. You wonder about the certain angle this would have been interpreted as having in the context of the Soviet Union in the late 60s, but even without that context, it's a fascinating, beautiful, and above all, accessible film. Number 2, The Plague Dogs. Look, I get it. Finding Nemo still hits a certain way. You want to really cry watching a cartoon? You want to get riggedy wrecked watching a cartoon? Watch this one. Double feature challenge, watch this with its spiritual predecessor, Watership Down, made by the same studio, based on another book by the same author, just as much as likely to make you pierce the veil of some teenage existential crisis you might be having. Back when I was a kid getting bored with Pixar movies, the only way you could see this thing was like if somebody ripped their Region 2 DVD copy and uploaded it in 12 separate parts on YouTube in 480p resolution. Then again, I know a lot of you Zoomers are getting into the habit of taking classical movies and uploading them in 3-minute increments on TikTok, so the more things change, the more they stay the same, don't they? Anyway, that's how I watched this thing for the first time, and I'm telling you, still, even in that format, utterly destroyed me, horrified me even. And now it's just on Tubi. Man, Tubi stays winning. Tubi stays winning. Number 3, Cats Don't Dance. Look, you Cars kids want to talk about nostalgia, you want to talk about 10 out of 10 kid experiences, get on my level. It's all cats dancing down here. Cats dancing and singing show tunes patterned after classic Hollywood. And don't you come at me with your boomer shit, okay? Cars is textbook boomer shit. It is shocking to me how boomer a lot of you kids these days are at heart. Cats Don't Dance is fire. It's got so much heart, some of the best series of songs written for any animated movie. Especially when you realize that this is one of those minor gambles at making an animated film outside of the Disney orbit back when I was growing up that underperformed and bankrupted the company that it made it. Well, let's face it, Cats Don't Dance bombed at the box office, but it didn't bomb in my heart. I loved this movie. Before I even could really wrap my head around what it was made in homage to, that period of classic Hollywood, I knew I loved it. I got a song to sing. If you don't like my song, I'm gonna sing it anyhow. Number 4, The Incredibles. You get one, okay? You get one. There's your 10 out of 10. And don't come at me wanting another one. You Pixar kids need to cool your shorts. You need to take the victory on The Incredibles and let everybody else be like, man, giving Cars 10 out of 10, that's a bit much. It's The Incredibles. It's great. What if Watchmen was written by a Republican? Insane the older you get, and hornier. It's great. Pixar sort of got an unfounded reputation for not being willing to go as blue as DreamWorks with the humor in its family animated movies. There's plenty of that stuff in Pixar movies, but The Incredibles is another level because it's not about creatures that we have no reference point for how they Like, it's a shockingly mature animated film by American standards because it actually acknowledges, like, physical intimacy and passion between adult characters. It's very much trying to realistically appeal to the different stages of where the family audience is at. Brad Bird had the sauce on that one. He had a streak of sauce. Iron Giant talking about movies that were written off as another vain attempt to challenge the Disney paradigm. And yes, I know he also made Ratatouille. Guess what? You're still missing the point. And I think, unfortunately, in the United States, it's virtually impossible for our animated movies to be original works that exceed that sort of extreme limits of the family audience perimeter. That's really what triggers me more about seeing 4 fucking Pixar movies in a row, man. It's just such a small part of what animation is. That's not an ode to animation. That's an ode to Pixar. That's an ode to Nike. That's an ode to a brand. Because it's not really about Pixar. It's not even really about the original poster. It's the fact that even if I keep things to just family audience, look, all of these recommendations are family friendly. They're perfectly appropriate for most kids. There is just so much more of a world than Pixar. That's all I'm saying. But The Incredibles is really good. Like I said, you get one.